A couple retires in 2015 with $1.2 million. Financial advisors told them they were set for life using the 4% rule. By 2023, they're back at work. Part-time at first, then full-time. A guy accumulates $850,000 by age 48, thinks he's coasting to early retirement. 3 years later, he's recalculating everything, pushing his retirement age back by a decade. A woman saves 15% of her income religiously for 22 years, hits her target number, and then discovers her target number was based on math from 1994. She needs 40% more. Here's what nobody's telling you. The savings rate you think is aggressive, it's probably 50% short of what you actually need. And the retirement calculators you're using, they're not just optimistic. They're systematically lying to you about 3 specific variables that have fundamentally changed in the last decade. I'm going to walk you through exactly how the math of retirement savings broke, why the standard advice from financial planners is designed to keep you working longer than necessary, and what the actual numbers look like when you account for reality instead of projections from the Clinton administration. By the way, I built a free early retirement calculator because most online ones are mathematically wrong. It uses BlackRock and Vanguard logic to expose the weak points in your plan, and I only ask for your email to send the report so I don't store any of your financial data. Link in the description. Here's the central problem. Saving for retirement is like trying to catch a bus, except the bus is accelerating, and someone keeps moving the bus stop further away, and they won't tell you they're doing it. The 4% rule, that sacred principle from 1994 that says you can withdraw 4% of your retirement savings annually and never run out, it assumed bond yields around 7% and inflation averaging 3%. In 2026, 10-year treasury bonds are yielding what? Maybe 4% on a good day? Your 4% withdrawal rate just became mathematically impossible without eating into principle. But here's where it gets really interesting. The 4% rule wasn't conservative when it was created. It was already the edge case. The Trinity study that everyone cites tested portfolios from 1926 to 1995. Know what percentage of those scenarios actually survived 30 years at 4% withdrawal? 95%. Which sounds great until you realize that 5% failure rate means you have a 1 in 20 chance of going broke. Would you get on a plane with a 5% crash rate? Now, you might be thinking, okay, so I'll save more. Problem solved. Except saving more doesn't fix the underlying issue because the goalposts keep moving in 3 distinct ways that compound against you. First movement of the goalpost. Inflation isn't 3%. Real inflation for retirees specifically runs about 1.5 to 2 percentage points higher than reported CPI. Why? Because CPI measures a basket of goods weighted toward what working age people buy. Retirees spend disproportionately on healthcare, which is inflated at 6 to 7% annually for 2 decades, and housing costs, which in most metro areas have inflated at 5 to 8%. The Bureau of Labor Statistics publishes an experimental CPIE, Consumer Price Index for the elderly, that consistently runs higher than standard CPI, but nobody uses it for projections. So every retirement calculator using 3% inflation is systematically underestimating your actual costs by 30 to 40% over a 30-year retirement. Let me put real numbers on this. If you retire needing $5,000 per month in living expenses, standard calculators assume that becomes about $8,300 per month after 20 years at 3% inflation. But at a more realistic 5% inflation rate for retiree-specific expenses, you'll actually need $13,200 per month. That's a 60% difference in required income, which means a 60% difference in how much you need saved. Here's a fun exercise. Pull up any mainstream retirement calculator. Fidelity, Vanguard, whatever. Punch in your numbers. Now manually override the inflation assumption from 3% to 5%. Watch your required savings number jump by somewhere between 40 and 70% depending on your age. That's not a rounding error. That's a different life. Second movement of the goalpost. Healthcare costs have separated from normal inflation entirely and exist in their own special hell dimension. In 2000, the average couple retiring at 65 needed about $160,000 for healthcare costs over their retirement. That's cumulative, total. By 2025, Fidelity estimates that same couple needs $315,000. That number doesn't include long-term care. Add nursing home or in-home care, And you're looking at another $200,000 to $500,000 depending on how long you live and whether you need memory care. But here's the kicker. Most retirement calculators have a line item for healthcare that says something like $10,000 per year or $12,000 per year. Know what Medicare Part B, Part D, and a Medigap supplement actually costs in 2026 for a couple? About $16,000 annually just in premiums before you spend a single dollar on actual healthcare. Before copays, before prescriptions not covered by Part D, before dental, which Medicare doesn't cover, before vision, which Medicare doesn't cover, before hearing aids, which Medicare doesn't cover until this year, and even then only partially. I know a guy, ran a small manufacturing business, saved aggressively, hit $2.1 million at 63, felt bulletproof. His wife developed early onset Alzheimer's at 66. He kept her at home with full-time care for 4 years because he couldn't stand putting her in a facility. Home health care at 18 hours a day in a mid-tier cost of living area, $85,000 per year. Not covered by Medicare, not covered by their health insurance. Just straight out of pocket. By the time she needed memory care placement at 70, they'd burned through $470,000. He's 74 now, working as a consultant, because staying retired isn't an option anymore. To be fair, that's an edge case. But edge cases are how you stress test a plan. The problem with retirement planning is everyone assumes there'll be the median case. You'll have median health, median longevity, median market returns, median inflation. Except if you're wrong about any single one of those variables, you don't miss your target by a little. You miss it by a decade of working years. Third movement of the goalpost, and this is the one that really gets people. Lifestyle creep isn't a personal failing. It's baked into the economic system you exist in. Here's what I mean. You start your career making $45,000. You're 28, you live in a one-bedroom apartment, you have a roommate or a partner who also works, you eat relatively cheap food, you don't have kids yet. Fast forward 20 years. You're 48, you're making $130,000. Objectively, you should be saving a fortune, right? Except now you live in a house because rent in your city became more expensive than a mortgage. You have 2 kids in high school, eyeing college. Your car's newer because your old one died. And new cars now cost $48,000 for a mid-tier sedan. Your health insurance premiums tripled because you're in an older age band and your employer shifted more cost to employees. You're taking care of aging parents in some capacity, maybe financially, maybe just in time and travel costs. Your baseline cost of existing went from maybe $30,000 a year at 28 to $95,000 a year at 48. Not because you're bad with money, because the minimum cost of maintaining a middle-class American life scaled up with inflation while your salary scaled up at roughly the same rate. This is where everyone says just live below your means, which yes, obviously. But let's be specific about what that means mathematically. If you're making $130,000 and you want to save 25% for retirement, that's $32,500 annually. You're now living on $97,500 before taxes. After federal, state, Social Security, Medicare, you're taking home maybe $68,000. That's $5,600 per month for housing, food, insurance, utilities, transportation, kids, everything. In a high cost of living area, that's tight. In a medium cost area, it's doable, but not comfortable. You're not taking vacations, you're not going to restaurants. You're living a lifestyle that feels restrictive compared to your peers, making similar money who aren't saving 25%. And here's the psychological trap. Humans are horrible at delayed gratification when the delay is measured in decades. You're 48 years old. You're sacrificing now for a benefit you might see at 65, which is 17 years away, which is 35% of your entire adult life up to this point. Your brain doesn't process that well. So people do the thing that feels rational in the moment. They save 10 or 12 or 15% instead of 25%. They tell themselves they'll catch up later. They believe the financial advisor who says they're on track because the financial advisor is using a calculator with 3% inflation and 7% nominal returns and no healthcare shock assumptions. By the way, hit subscribe if you like the content, otherwise YouTube's algorithm may never show you my videos again. Now, here's the fourth movement of the goalpost, and this is the one that sophisticated people miss because it's genuinely non-intuitive. Sequence of returns risk. The order in which you experience investment returns matters way more than the average return. Every retirement calculator shows you an average annual return, 7%, 8%, whatever. But you don't get average returns. You get the actual sequence of returns that the market delivers starting from the year you retire. Let me show you what this looks like with real numbers. Two people both retire in January with $1 million. Both plan to withdraw $40,000 per year, 4%. Both experience the same set of returns over the next 10 years. 7%, minus 3%, 12%, minus 8%, 15%, 5%, minus 2%, 9%, minus 5%, 11%. The average annual return? About 6.4%. Person A gets those returns in the order I just listed. Person B gets the exact same returns, but in reverse order. After 10 years, person A has about $983,000 left. Person B has 1.08 million. Same returns. 50% difference in outcome? No. Person B has about 11% more money. But here's the thing. Over a 30-year retirement, that difference compounds. Starts small, gets massive. The reason is simple. When you're withdrawing money every year, negative returns early in retirement do permanent damage. You're selling assets at depressed prices to fund your living expenses. Those shares never recover because they're gone. You're out of the market for that rebound. If the bad returns happen late in retirement, you've had years of growth to build a buffer, so the damage is minimal. This is why retiring into a bear market is catastrophically different from retiring into a bull market, even if the long-term averages end up the same. And none of the free calculators account for this. They just show you a straight line projection based on average returns, which is like planning a road trip based on your average speed, including all rest stops and traffic. The math doesn't work. Let me give you a concrete case study. Meet David. Not a real person, but a composite of probably 15 conversations I've had with business owners in the last 3 years. David's 52. He runs a small software consultancy, makes around $230,000 per year, been saving aggressively since his mid-30s, has 1.4 million in retirement accounts, another 300,000 in taxable brokerage, no pension. Wife doesn't work, 2 kids out of college, financially independent, house is paid off. David wants to retire at 60. That gives him 8 more years of contributions. At his current savings rate, he's putting away $70,000 per year between his 401k and taxable accounts. With average 7% returns, he's on track to have about 3.2 million at 60. Sounds great, right? Financial advisor says he's golden. 4% rule says he can withdraw 128,000 per year. He's spending about 90,000 currently, so he has cushion. Here's what the advisor isn't modeling. David's health insurance alone will cost $32,000 per year from 60 to 65 before Medicare kicks in. That's using COBRA or ACA Marketplace, assuming no major health issues. His property taxes are $8,000 per year and rising at about 4% annually because he lives in a state with no income tax but high property taxes. Home maintenance and unexpected repairs on a 20-year-old house average around $9,000 per year. His wife wants to travel during the early retirement years while they're both healthy. Budget, $25,000 per year for that. We're at $74,000 in fixed costs before food, utilities, car replacement, gifts, helping kids with grandkids someday, or any quality of life expenses. Now add inflation. At 5% real retiree inflation, his $90,000 lifestyle becomes $137,000 by the time he's 75. But he's been withdrawing $128,000 per year, which was 4% of 3.2 million. By age 75, even with growth, he's probably drawn down to around 2.3 million if returns are average. If he retires in a year where the market drops 25% in his first year, which has happened multiple times in the last 25 years, he's in serious trouble by age 70. David doesn't have a spending problem. He has a math problem that every mainstream calculator told him wasn't a problem. Here's the really fun part. And by fun, I mean infuriating. The financial services industry has a massive incentive to tell you you're on track even when you're not. Why? Because the longer you stay invested with them, the more fees they collect. If your advisor tells you you're 40% short of your goal, you might panic and pull your money out to try some other strategy. But if they tell you you're on track, you keep funding that 401k, you keep those assets under management, they keep collecting 75 basis points or 1% or whatever they're charging. I spent 10 years running my own business, surrounded by accountants and fiscal lawyers. You know what they taught me? Always ask who benefits from the advice you're getting. If your financial advisor's entire business model depends on you staying invested in the market through them, maybe they're not the most objective source about whether you're saving enough. To be clear, I'm not saying markets are bad or that financial advisors are evil. I'm saying the incentives are misaligned. The advice you get is structurally biased toward optimism because pessimistic advice costs the advisor clients. So what do you actually do with this information? 3 things. First, recalculate your number using realistic assumptions. 5% inflation for retiree costs, not 3. Healthcare expenses starting at $300,000 for a couple and rising at 6% per year. Sequence of returns risk by running Monte Carlo simulations, not straight line average returns. When you do this, your required savings number probably jumps by 40 to 60%. That's not meant to scare you. It's meant to give you an accurate target so you can plan accordingly. Maybe you work 3 more years. Maybe you cut lifestyle now to save more. Maybe you plan for part-time work and early retirement. But you can't make those decisions without accurate data. Second, build multiple income streams before you retire. The 4% rule assumes you're living entirely off portfolio withdrawals. But what if you had even $20,000 per year coming from something other than your investments? A small rental property, cash flowing $1,500 per month, consulting work 10 hours per week, royalties from a book or course you create, Social Security at 70 that's maximized. Every dollar of non-portfolio income reduces your withdrawal rate. If you need $90,000 per year to live, and you have $20,000 coming from other sources, you only need to withdraw $70,000 from your portfolio. On a $3 million portfolio, that's 2.3% instead of 3%. That difference is massive over 30 years. Third, accept that you'll probably work longer than you want or work part-time in retirement. This isn't motivational, it's statistical. The average retirement age in America is somewhere around 64, but life expectancy is pushing 80. That's 16 years of portfolio withdrawals before Social Security is optimized at 70. For most people, the math doesn't work without either a much higher savings rate during working years or some form of income during retirement years. That income doesn't have to be a soul-crushing job. It can be something you actually enjoy doing that happens to generate $20,000 or $30,000 per year. But pretending you'll have a 40-year career and a 30-year retirement funded entirely by savings is, for most people, a fantasy. Look, lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. But lazy planning destroys more retirements than market crashes. The system is designed to tell you you're fine when you're not, to keep you contributing to tax-deferred accounts, to keep assets under management high. Run the real numbers. Stress test for the bad scenarios. Plan for the goalpost to keep moving, because it will.